أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين حبيب الله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers. And today we're going to begin our next session of our lesson. So we're on lesson 3 now. We discussed the last 2 previous lessons when we were discussing ways to attain God. Why do I need God in my own life? And then we went to the next point in which we discussed there's 2 ways for us to understand God. One of them was the inward way. One was from within. And one of the main fundamental points here was the word Fitrah. Fitrah is part of your nature of insan. And through Fitrah, we're able to truly be able to grasp our own understanding of Allah. Fitrah can never ever go away. It's not a part of someone's culture, but it's ingrained in one's human DNA that they have to be able to find a God or someone who is of a higher power. We can see that through every society, there's always existed a form of Fitrah in one way or another. And we can even see Fitrah today in different shapes and forms. So having understood that inward path, we're going to today discuss the outward path. Of course, the book is 50 Lessons on Principles of Belief for Youth by Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi. And we're going to discuss that outward way as we discussed. So let's go ahead and begin. The outward way. With a quick glance at the world that we live in, we realize that there's not really any chaos or disorder. Everything is aligned and everything is orderly. So in this way that everything moves towards a clear direction and everything is without chaos, we can understand that there has to be an important creator. So this is our outward way. When you look towards nature, when you look towards the universe, when you look towards everything that's around you, you're able to understand that there's actually an intelligent design. Let's look at some important points to understand this even further. To come into being and to remain, every living creature must be a part of a series of laws and special conditions. For instance, we have a tree. A tree, for it to exist, there has to be water, there has to be soil, there has to be the sun to be able to give it light for it to have food, right? And that's the way that the tree grows. Now we can see that these are specific laws and conditions that exist for that tree to exist. If those conditions didn't exist, we can understand that the tree cannot be. So because of that, we understand that there has to be a design for that tree to be able to exist in a way that for us to plant the seeds and nourish them, then they become green and they grow, as it said in the text there. Every creature has a special effect to it. Water and fire each have their own particularities, which don't separate from them. They constantly follow permanent laws. So it's pretty straightforward. Every single thing that exists has its own permanent laws, as we previously wrote in number 1. And number 3, all the members and the organs of a living creature, they're coordinated with each other. They work together to form a certain kind of structure system. And we can see that in the human body, we ourselves have a whole world inside, right? Every single organ that you have, every single system that you have, for example, as simple as your respiratory system, or the system for example, if there's any diseases or so. The way it fights off is perfected to a way that you don't even need to control it, right? There's no way that you can control it, but it's able to fight off any bacterial diseases that enter your body. So this is a way that we understand that even unconsciously, there's a special coordination even within our own bodies. And fourth, of course, we can understand even outside of this from the way that the world works and the various creatures that exist in the world. Complete environments from animals that have food chains, right? All of this is in a very specific order. How they work together, it's in complete unison. And in that way, we're able to show that there's a complete design. For instance, the nourishment of living creatures, the sun shines, the clouds bring rain, and the earth has the resources to also help. This shows that there has to be a clear system in this universe for it to exist, for the earth to exist. If we were to, for example, take out one small aspect of it, of the chain, we understand that the whole chain collapses in itself. So there has to be complete design, and what brings design but an intellectual creator. So that's a way for us to be able to understand outwardly. But we're going to continue on this discussion for us to be able to understand that order, that relationship that order must have with intellect. The two are inseparable. When we don't have order, we don't have intellect. But when you have intellect, you can have order within the world. It's clear that whenever order exists, as we said, there has to be an intellect, thought, a plan, and a goal. Because whenever a human being sees order, permanent laws, and a reckoning of things, he or she knows that besides that source, knowledge and power must also be sought. He knows that, for example, let's say we give an illiterate person a computer, a laptop. They've never ever studied before. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. We'll tell them, write a beautiful book, right? For example, like they say, for a monkey to write Shakespeare, how long would that take? We would say even millions of years, billions of years. It's impossible. Just by them typing different types of letters, he'll get into creating a beautiful novel. It's completely almost impossible, right? But we know that when we see, for example, different works, like a simple novel, when I see a book in front of me, I know that it couldn't have been created by someone except for someone who was very studied, someone who was very smart, someone who studied in school. That is a way for us to be able to understand it. Also, another example they gave was for a child. Let's say we give a 2-year-old a notebook and some crayons. How likely is it that they're going to create a Van Gogh painting or a painting that sells for millions of dollars? It's very unlikely, right? So even with this, we're able to understand that for that type of order to exist, it couldn't have been created by someone like that. In that way, we're able to understand that when a human being finds order in something, their mind goes towards a creator of that, a smart, intelligent creator that would have created it. So that's how we would be able to know that. Without even asking who the writer is or so, we're able to understand that that person is an intellectual person, for example, that write that book. Thus, whenever there's order, there must be intellect. And that's just such a small system, right? That's just one small book that you find, or one painting. If we look at the whole entire universe in its expansion, we find that there has to be someone that's completely intellectual. There must be a creator of this universe. For all the order that comes in place has to have a creator. Sometimes in order to prove this issue, with every system, they need a source of knowledge. The law of probabilities, mathematicians, they've achieved in high mathematics, it's used to prove, for example, that for an illiterate individual who wants to type an article, an essay, or a poem, by randomly pressing random buttons, it would take them, with the law of probabilities, millions of years to be able to write that. Of course, a human being only lives one lifetime, 100 of years. So what's the chances of that happening? 1 in a million, probably, right? 1 in a billion. So that's just one specific thing, such as a book, for it to example be made. So a law of probability shows that there has to be a designer in that aspect. And we have the Quran, which says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكفي بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. Soon we will show our signs upon the horizons and in their own souls until it becomes manifest to them that this is the truth. Is it not enough that Thy nourishes is aware of all things? So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discussing, of course, that aspect of the intelligent design. Let's move on to the examples of an intellectual design. We're going to spend this next part looking at 3 important examples. I'm going to show you how all 3 are examples of something that's so intricate, something that exists in nature, that only someone who is a creator in that way would be able to, an intellectual creator could put that into existence. The cerebrum of your brain. So the cerebrum is a certain part of your brain that is the center of your willpower. It's the center of your consciousness. It's the center of your memory. In other words, it's one of the most sensitive areas in the brain, and many of your reactions and your inner senses, such as your anger, your fear, your happiness, they all are in that specific cerebrum area. Let's say we take it out of an animal and we leave their organs intact. They still remain alive, but its understanding and its consciousness will totally be eliminated. So just one small aspect of your brain is in control of all that. And for that to be gone would mean for your whole system to collapse in itself. Have you ever thought about how wonderful our sense of memory is? If our sense of memory is taken from us for even an hour, how crazy we'd be in a situation. We wouldn't know our parents, we wouldn't know our friends, we wouldn't know anyone around us, right? So one small aspect like the cerebrum, which is in charge of our memory, is in control of everything that we believe we are. If we lose it, we lose ourselves in a way, right? The center of your memory fills a small part of your brain. That's part of your memories that are stored throughout their lifetime. Whoever's related to us, the particularities of a person, clothes, spirit, we all keep this storage in a different area, and a special file is formed for each one. Many books have been written about the wonders of the human brain. For anyone who studied this in the scientific field, they would know how crazy or how beautiful the brain is. Can you believe that such an extraordinary system is so subtle, so accurate, complicated, and mysterious to be made? Could be made from something that's an unconscious nature, from the universe could be made in that way. More wonderful than this is to believe that an unintelligent nature could create that, right? A nature that is not a God. Something else could have created something as amazing as this. Make sense? The brain is such a amazing facet that we have. Let's look at something else. I'm sure all of you know what that is, right? A bat. How does a bat move around without its eyes? One of the kids, tell me, how does it move? Through sound waves, right? So, for example, I'll show you an example. The bat does not have eyes, so it moves as fast as a bird by, for example, sending sound waves out. When it reacts with something, it comes back. With this, they know that there exists an object, right? And they won't hit that object. So with these sound waves, this is the way that a bat moves. The ability of a bat is proof of an effect which is similar to a radar, right? Just like we have radars today. We now need to know what a radar is in order to be able to see that within this small bat. In physics, in discussions on forms, waves are discussed, which are beyond sound waves. These waves are the same waves whose length and frequency are so great that the human ear cannot even hear them. These frequencies are even beyond us as humans. That they're unseeable, unhearable, but they exist. And this is what these bats use. These waves are for them to be able to send out, and they'll reach back to them to be able to know what exists. When these waves are set off by the means of very strong transmitters, these waves move forward. Whenever they meet something, they will come back. So even this, we're able to use this in our own aircrafts. We're using this in our own ships. Ships are able to have a radar based on these bats. The way that they react is with waves. They send out, those waves come back in. This is another example of design in nature that exists, right? A bat, even without eyes, which exists in complete darkness, is able to move around and find out everything. And we have, as humans, have learned from that. And for us, we copy these bats to be able to create our own radars. And only as a result, from copying Allah's design, do we answer our own problems. And our final example is the tiny world of atoms. Let's move even smaller than the brain or the human body. Let's move smaller than a bat. Well, let's move into atoms. None of you have ever seen atoms, right? The extraordinary sense of order is that nowadays we have hundreds of elements. And each element has from one electron moving all further to even over 100, right? And because of this, these are all such an amazing order that they're born, they exist, and we're completely unaware about them. They have a strong sense of balance. We know that two different electrons, they attract each other. Thus, electrons which are negative and a nucleus which is positive should attract each other. In addition, we also know that the encirclement of electrons around a nucleus brings a repulsive force into being, flight from the center. Thus, the pull of this force draws electrons away from the atomic environment. The atom is separated, and its attractive forces want to attract the electrons and destroy the atoms. So we can see, of course, in that image in the background, if you're able to see it, that's how they work, right? The electrons, they move around that nucleus. In addition, we know that the encirclement of electrons around the nucleus brings a repulsive force into being, flight from the center, and it is here that one sees accurately the force of attraction and repulsion that has been systematically arranged in atoms. So neither do the electrons flee, nor are they attracted, but are always in a state of balance, continuing their movement. Is it possible that a blind, a deaf nature could ever bring this into existence? This kind of atom that moves in a way that it will never touch that, but it will never fly out. This electron is in perfect unison in how it flies around the nucleus. Each upon its own way. We've had some atoms that have multiple number of electrons, but not all of the electrons move in one circuit. rather in multiple circuits, each electron in a determined distance, each with its own area, with great speed, move like this for millions of years without any contradiction arising from them. And it's a simple issue that's a fixed circuit, a movement. Could this ever happen in a way that we're not able to understand it? Now let me show you this great energy of this atom. You think, okay, so it exists in nature. So in 1945, we understand the strength of such an atom. An experiment of the atom bomb. During World War II, we can see that scientists discover a way that from this very small, they can create a small atomic bomb. And this was placed in a metal stand. After this explosion, the metal melted and set off steam, electricity, and a frightful sound was heard. When science went to look for it, there was no sign of it. So this was for a way for us to be able to understand this. The scientists were able to adjust this in a way to have created that. And they studied so much. That's the level of the atom bomb. If it's just adjusted in a minor way, we can set off huge explosions like the tests that they did in World War II. So we'll finish off, of course, with an ayah of the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولو أنما في الأرض من شجرة أقلام والبحر يمده من بعده سبعة أبحر ما نفدت كلمات الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. And if all the trees on earth were pens and the oceans were ink, with 7 oceans behind it to add to its supply, yet it would not add the words of God, be exhausted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so high. He is such an amazing creator, such an intellectual creator, for him to have put this into existence. And with this, we're able to find design in the universe. And with this, I want to, of course, ask this final question to all of you. Can you think of different ways that we have intelligent design in our own universe? You can probably give me millions of different examples that you have found in your own daily lives of an intelligent design existing, right? From the way that different insects or bees move towards flowers and flowers are to exist. Or the way that, for example, a bird is able to exist and fly on its own without being able to be taught so. These are all different type of examples. Anyone in the audience, of course, you guys can think about it as well. And with that, you'll be able to understand that there has to be an intelligent designer that has to put that design in its own place. And that ends off our discussion. Inshallah, join me again next week as we continue on in our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's end off our session with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajil farajahum.